Happy Friday, everybody. It's Chamber Check-In time. And today I get to share a cool story from a brand new member. We have the owner and founder of Trifan Events, Anca Trifan. Hi, Anca.
Hi, hi, hi. Had to do it, Paul.
I love it.
You knew it was coming.
I did. I totally knew it was coming. Hey, I'm excited to have our conversation and share kind of the origin story of how you got your start. But first, I get to thank our sponsor for these Chamber Check-ins series, Delta Dental of Idaho. Anca, Delta Dental of Idaho, they've been providing high quality dental insurance benefits that are backed and designed by the largest network of dentists in the country. And with that, I get to share a fun video from their Tooth Truth series. Here we go.
Did you know that kids laugh around 400 times a day and adults just 15 times a day? Lighten up, adults.
I love that one. Thank you, Delta Dental. And hello, Anca. Tell us about Trifan Events and how you got your start.
Well, Paul, let me just say this. It's such an honor to be here. So thank you for the invitation. And for anyone that doesn't know who I am, has not seen my face enough on LinkedIn or other social media channels, my name is Anca Trifan. I live in Meridian. I am a certified meeting professional and a technical event producer at Trifan Events, which I am the founder, creator, and CEO of. Trifan Events is a boutique event planning and production agency that is offering event planning, experience design, and production management for live, virtual, and hybrid events. And I'm also the host of Events Demystified, which is super fun. I use the same streaming software that Paul is using to record and stream all my episodes. It's a tactical podcast packed with tips and tools and strategy for anyone really beginning in events or a pro. And for the past 2 years, it's been so much fun because I got to interview some really cool event professionals, local, national, and global, and learn a thing or two, from their personal and professional experience. I love when people, share stories because we connect with stories and we relate to some of the things that people get to share. So if I get to share a bit of my story, I would love to do that, start a little bit with the beginning. So if you give me a minute or two, maybe 3 hours, I'll get to do it. But really, where I started my production career, started in radio back in high school and college. And I had the best of times during a season that, most people, when they think of high school, they usually hate high school. It's like, no, that was the worst time of my life. But for me, it was amazing because I was doing something that not a lot of, 16-year-olds are given the opportunity to do. And after college, when I moved to US, because I didn't think that I could continue, my career in radio due to my accent. I was very insecure about my accent at the time. I started working, in the closest field that I knew and was good at, and that was event productions. And some people might think like, what, radio to AV productions? I mean, what's the connection? Because I don't really see it. Well, if you take, the microphone away, a radio DJ, at least in my time, had to run the soundboard, had to mix the levels for music and the spoken word. Create audio promos, moderate interviews, live on air. And we did everything. And because I was hungry to learn as much as I could, that hunger really traveled with me to the US. And when I started in event productions for a mid-sized company, this was at the time way back in time in LA, I learned everything from the ground up. I started with coiling cables and then ended up with mixing live sound for concerts and corporate events and a bunch of cool people with big, cool names. And I'm not going to name drop, but that's basically what my life has been. And then eventually in time, it was time to settle down and leave my rock star career behind. Really, I met my husband, which is the most laid back person ever. And it was like, okay, Anca, you kind of that was fun, but that's adult now.
Right.
So we end up getting married, moving to the Pacific Northwest. And that's when my career a little bit changed from concerts and shows and all types of fashion shows, I mean, really fun stuff, into corporate events, because Portland, where we moved to, it was more of a corporate scene. And that's where I also got into nonprofit fundraising, and I started working in the nonprofit sector. And it would be several years later when I finally got the courage to really unplug myself from everyone that I was working for and start my own company. And eventually we moved to Boise, and we've been in Boise for about 5, going on 6 years now. And I've been flying really back and forth between the Pacific Northwest and Boise for the last 5 years for events, all the way until, end of February of 2020, when the pandemic started. And with that, there was no other option but pivot to virtual for the majority of the events that were in my pipeline at the time. And when I look back, at my professional journey, I'm beyond grateful to have gotten the opportunity to learn hands-on and work a whole lot of events, quite diverse events in my life, and built this extensive knowledge and experience in the areas of technical event production, event planning, management, experience design, because that has really helped me in my pivot. And all of that, thanks to someone that gave me a small job in a small radio station in a far away town. So yeah, that's really in a nugget of time, my story. And I currently, I plan and I produce virtual events, and some have already turned into a hybrid event. And to keep myself, from, and especially my sound mixing skills from rusting, I still mix live sound here in town on a monthly or sometimes even weekly basis, because at the end of the day, as much as, I glorify, the fact that virtual events have given us events in 2020, nothing really compares with the energy behind, being there in person, behind the tech table, behind a mixing board, mixing live shows, doing events in person. And I mean, I'm sure you know what that means, right? So aside from all of that, which sounded way longer than I intended it to be, because, it can be a little tiring talking about yourself. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 2 kids, 8 and 4, actually almost 5. She reminds me every day that she's almost 5.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And I've also always seen myself as an advocate for women in the event production and technology world. I am the type of person that is always going to be the eternal optimist, the strong believer in the goodness of people. I love adventure. I love the outdoors. And you can really find me hiking, camping, and stand-up paddling all summer long if you would let me. And Idaho is perfect for that, right?
That's awesome, Anca. Thanks for sharing kind of the origin story of where we're at today. And I wanted to thank first, before we go any further, Brittany Cobb for introducing us. She's with Innovate Meetings and Events, and she's been a great steward of the Boise Chamber as well. And, recruiting great people to our organization to help with other members, right? It's business to business. Yeah. So
trying to do a heart across the screen.
Oh, right. Hey, you mentioned that you were working in the nonprofit sector, and our chamber offers a nonprofit council to folks that are running organizations and have great causes, and they do really good work. And it's gala season, right, for all these nonprofits. And one of the things that they were talking about in our meeting is what Plan A, Plan B, and what does Plan C look like? What are some of your insights for those that are putting on events right now in this fluid time that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, that is a fantastic question, because if I can summarize some of the meetings of the last 2 weeks, that is pretty much what has been like. Coming up with Plan A, Plan B, C, and D, really, if you could, because everybody is hit with this reality again that we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We were last year when, we were in the same sort of a predicament. At least we knew, okay, we're looking forward to the vaccines and there's hope. And right now we're going to do our virtual event and hope for the best. But you know what? Come next year, we're all in person person, and it's going to be so fantastic and so amazing, right? And I mean, we did a little bit of that in the spring of this year. I've done a few in-person events. I've done a few hybrid events. And then, in the nonprofit sector, usually you have the peak of events happening in the spring and in the fall. And summer has been a little slow, taking a little time off, because if you've worked in events during this season, you know that you've been, wiped. No. And you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your mental health. You have to really put boundaries around, how you spend your time and your energy. So coming back from a pretty full summer of like activities and things, I was looking at my fall and everything looked great until 2 weeks ago. And that's when the phone started ringing and the emails coming through, and everybody, like, okay, oh gosh, we were like 100% that we're going to pack 500 people into a ballroom in the fall. And because we had our vaccines, everybody's like, show their vaccine card or whatever, and we're going to be fine. But really, at the end of the day, now it doesn't sound that might be a reality for a lot of groups for different reasons. Even if some of the participants, members, guests, whomever you're inviting to your fundraising gala have been vaccinated and have taken all the precautions, some of them might not feel comfortable with being in person, and they're not going to want to be in person. And even like having so many people in a ballroom, it becomes a liability. No event wants to be the super spreader, right? So it's definitely been a lot of, okay, so if we're not going to be able to do a 100% go back in person, then what are our options, And I always say, my strategy from the beginning has been something that I kept saying it over and over again on my podcast is, we were very sure, a little bit too sure about the fact that things are turning around and we're just going to go full steam into in-person, but without really necessarily having the data, the metrics to back that up. So our strategy should have been, well, how about we keep doing our virtual event in the fall, but add a smaller in-person element to that. And then you can you can start building, like, we're going to do smaller, in-person now, but we can maybe enlarge that number based on what's happening, based on what's, the situation. Everybody else, most of the people that I talk to, they went the other way around, and they started like building this big in person. And now, like, how are we going to, make those numbers smaller? How are we going to get our deposits back from the venues? Because that has been like the biggest thing, is like, if I booked a date at the venue and now I can't get my deposit back, that's a lot of money that I don't really have to waste, right? So on the production end, what we get is a lot of, well, cancel my virtual event date because I'm, it used to be like, cancel all my virtual event dates because we're going in person. Now they're coming back. They're like, where's my virtual event date? I'm like, well, you canceled it. Why did you cancel it? Well, you asked for it. It can't be a soft date. It has to be a hard date. If we keep going back and forth, I mean, nobody can do any planning anymore, and we can't really, work in that type of setup and environment. So now we have all these people coming back wanting their virtual because they're really concerned about doing it in person. And if you're going to still do in person, at least open a window into the room and allow people to join virtually. Like the same way, I was just telling you, Paul, in the beginning, nobody would question the need to have an accessibility parking spot at a venue. Multiple parking spots as a venue. Why do we question the need to have a virtual event as an accessibility need? And it's not just that element, but it's also the fact that the needs of the audience have changed, and you can still capitalize on, the content that you're going to produce, and why not reuse it and repurpose it in so many different ways? And especially if you have, sponsors, give them opportunities for the reach that a virtual event adds to your in-person event. Yeah. And it's funny because we are also talking about data and metrics, right? You're showing me all the impressions on just that, the show that you're doing with the checkings. The reality is, data and metrics have, in the words of Don Berger, because I love that metaphor that he used one time, he was on my podcast, and he was saying, that was always a leaky bucket when it came to events. Like, you couldn't really capitalize on all the data when it came to people just walking by this sponsor poster that was set in the hallway, you didn't know how many eyes actually met that specific poster. But with data and the virtual events that we now have, we know how many people clicked, we know how many people joined the feed, we know how many people dropped, when did they drop, and why. We can then generate a whole different type of strategy based on that information, so that if you had a virtual event in 2020 and you're thinking, wow, that wasn't very successful, we only raised, I don't know, this much. Honestly, a lot of my events have raised an incredible amount of money. And that's not necessarily because I'm so amazing. Yes, I am a little bit, but it's also because there's a lot of strategy, there's marketing, there's an entire team of people that pulls together and makes this event awesome. And they all work hand in hand, right? So if there's no marketing done before the event and you expect that everybody's just going to land on your stream somehow by default, that's not going to happen this year anymore. I mean, if anything, there's so many virtual events right now. If anything, there's so much content, so much information. People are already getting fatigued of that, right? It has to be so amazing. It has to be so tied to the cause and to your organization that your donor base is not going to want to miss it. And you have to give them reason why they're going to, come and spend even an hour of their time, partaking in your event. So yeah, I mean, those are really a lot of the things that are going on right now. And I wish that we didn't have to, because we're also tired and fatigued and kind of like fed up of this reality. I'm like, we were hoping that by now, we don't have to deal with this. And here we are again. Yeah. So if there's any hope, just know that there's people like me and a lot of other production houses that's all we think about, that's all we work on, and trying to come up with solutions so that you don't have to do it alone.
I love it. Yeah, it's so important to have the plan, even if it's not clear and there's not a lot of clarity. You still need plans. You got to have plan A, plan B, plan C, and then, like you said, plan D and E. But hey, before we go, I want to make sure that talk about a little bit of tech challenges. What are some common tech challenges, and what type of AV vendor partner do those nonprofits need?
Well, I feel like when we are doing a lot of in-person events, if you think of your AV team, either it was something that was house provided or it was outsourced, a partner that was outsourced. And most event planners that I work with, they trusted that the AV, provider, partner, they would just bring, their screens, their sound, their lighting, and all the tech in the back, and everything would happen, right? Now, with the complexity of hybrid events, there's also different layers of having to be able to stream the event, make sure that the stream is solid, like even the challenges of getting solid dedicated internet connections at venues can be a problem. That's like maybe one of the biggest ones, especially if you're looking into hybrid in the fall and not paying like $1 million because that's a challenge, a budget line that just went through the roof as far as cost. And then being sure that whomever your AV vendor is has done a few virtual events in the past, so they can incorporate the in-person with the hybrid technology, so that whatever is for the person event is set up, is clear, is ready to go, but it can also be provided as a stream to an audience and engagement, all the tools, all the things that I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of what that actually means. If you want to learn more about it, you can find a lot of information on my blog, or you can listen to the podcast. But really, it's super important now more than ever to do a little bit of research on, okay, show me, because now there's data, right? Like, show me what kind of events have you done in 2020? Like, if you've done virtual events, that means that you have some content that you can show me. If you've done a hybrid event, show me some of that content. Because if you just go with someone that, say, is in-house, and for the longest time they have been, furloughed and they weren't able to do a lot of work. I mean, sure, some of the people that were on those teams have tried to find work, because everybody has to pay their bills somehow. But like, if you haven't done a lot of that during the pandemic and now you're coming into it it, you're gonna be the the cobaye, the event that's going to be tested on, and you don't want to be that. If that's your only event of the year, then you better have someone that has gone and done all the mistakes, learned all the tricks, and now they're able to produce the event at the highest level of production, so that you know at the end of the day you're happy and you feel safe of how the outcome has come, and you feel proud of it. So there's a few different things that can go into that. Labor shortage is a real deal, and it's a real problem right now. And it's funny because we were just talking about that with Paul in a completely different area of just general things, but that is just as real in event productions, because I know personally I have a lot of friends that had to change careers because they didn't have work for the longest time, especially if you've worked in the ballroom and you've worked hands-on, where you can just pivot to virtual, right? Your skills don't just apply to virtual. You had to go find something else, pay the bills. And now coming back to in person, like I've had a really hard time at a convention center in a different city trying to reach the AV department there, because there was no AV department, and we're prospecting for fall, and they're hoping, and this was like just last month, right? So we're hoping in July that by fall, they're going to have labor to support this event. And I'm already like, anxiety going through the roof. Yeah, I don't think I can risk it. I really need to bring another outsource vendor in and have someone that I can trust, because I mean, what are you going to do? Like call people on the street and say, hey, can you run lights? Okay. Or end up like one of my events having a guy that was running lights, having to do sound. And that was never like gonna work out. So anyway, it's like a lot of things that probably you're already thinking as an event professional, like how we're gonna put butts in seats or eyes on screen, and so much preparation, and what type of content we're gonna show, and who's gonna be in person versus who's gonna be virtual. And then adding to that the layer of production technology that has to happen, because if anything nowadays you're looking at the expectation is to be looking at a event that is broadcast quality. We're not happy with just some hook it up type of event. Let's put it together and hope for the best, because we've had a year and a half of this. There's a different standard. There's a different level of expectation from the client, from the audience, from everyone that is out there online. You don't want to sever your brand with putting out something that is not quality. So lots of things to take in consideration for sure.
Anca, I want to thank you for your insights and expertise today. I want to thank you for investing in your regional chamber here with the Boise Metro. It means a lot to us, and I certainly look forward to when I get to meet you in person at an upcoming event, Anca.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this, fantastic time that we had. If anyone has more questions and would like to reach out to me, do that on LinkedIn, because that's where I really connect the most with event professionals and clients and everyone really that has questions. And I'm an open book. I mean, the reason why I came up with the podcast as a pet project in the, the beginning years was because I wanted to provide as much as resources, information, and knowledge to anyone that wanted to learn, like get a little bit of extra tips and advice on what should we do, like all this event production. And I've had so many different guests share their expertise that at this point, if you don't know, is because you're not looking for the information. I mean, unless it hits you in the face, short of that, nothing else, you don't have an excuse anymore.
No, there's only 4 more months left of this year. I can't even believe it.
I can't believe it either. I'm telling you, it's been so fast, going by so fast.
Yeah. All right, Anca. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.